Hello guys, so in today's video we're going to be talking about how, why, and when to clean your fish tank. And in today's video I'm going to be demonstrating and talking about my personal 40-gallon tank. Everything I say in this video is from personal experience. The first of three methods that I commonly use is the pump method. So the most easiest way to explain this is basically just pumping the water through a hose into a bathtub, a sink, or outside my front door. I only use this method on my larger tanks. For instance, the 40-gallon that we're going to be cleaning out in today's video. I also use it on my 125-gallon, and I'll occasionally use it on my 20 gallons, although I do not use it on them often.
I actually use the bucket though after the pump to fill the tank back up with, as it's faster than the pumping water back in. The second method would be the cup and bucket method, which is where you scoop the water out of your tank with a cup and then put it into a bucket, dump it in a sink, bathtub, or outside, and then of course you fill that bucket back up with water and fill your tank back up after you're done emptying it. That can of course be done on all size tanks, and I have very painfully done it on my 125 before I bought a pump. However, I prefer to only do it on my 10s and 20s. It is the easiest, basic, and cheapest option if you want to just clean out your fish tank. All it requires is a cup and a bucket. Actually, you don't even need a bucket. You could just use a cup. It would just take a whole lot longer. Moving on to the third method. The third and final method I almost never use because I have a pump, but you could siphon out your water, which is basically where you get a siphon going by sucking water out of the end of a hose going to the tank, and you let gravity do the work for you and take it outside in a bathtub, in a sink, or anything like that. The only thing with this is, of course, if you have your tank on the ground or something, it might be hard to start a siphon, as it might be hard to have gravity working for you. I almost never use the siphon method, and I think the last time I did was probably over 2 years ago when I did not have a pump and was using it to siphon out one of my 20 gallons outside. I would not recommend it, as it's probably the hardest out of all three options, and you could easily do the same thing but faster with a bucket or a pump. And that's all three of the most common methods summed up. All of them are fairly easy, fairly inexpensive. I mean, simple as it gets for changing your water in your fish tank. The next segment we're going to be talking about is why. So, to start off with, it's obviously very beneficial to your little fishy friends and makes them much happier and will allow them to live a healthier life, of course. So, nitrates, which is the main reason you would be wanting to do a water change in the first place, can harm your fish negatively. High nitrates can lead to stress in your fish. High amounts of stress over long periods of time, or even extremely high levels of stress over short periods of time, can lead to a compromised immune system, which can lead to certain common diseases or uncommon diseases such as ick. Ick is in most fish tanks. In fact, I'm willing to bet it's in every single one of my freshwater fish tanks I own. However, because my fish do not have a compromised immune system, none of them are getting ick. And if I was to neglect my fish by not doing water changes, not feeding them properly, all of that fun stuff, my fish would very likely get ick and would probably pass it on to all of their friends, which would be absolutely no good for the whole entire tank. That's the end of the why segment. If you want to go ahead and skip to the middle of this video, you can, although I would recommend watching the rest of it, as I'm sure it will amuse you at least a little bit. Also, don't forget to subscribe, of course, if you haven't, and don't forget to like the video. Now, I hope you enjoyed the rest of the video of me cleaning off my 40-gallon. I start cleaning my tank by removing everything off of the lid and light, as I keep a good bit of my food for my fish on top of it, and some cleaning supplies. Then, of course, I take the light off, lift the lid up, and then put the light back. If you're doing this, don't forget, unplug your filter. If you don't unplug your filter, you could burn it out and break it. That's no good and a complete waste of money. Also, unplug your heater. Don't want to break that either. Since I'm doing the pump, I ran it to my bathtub. I usually run it out of my window in my room, but today was so cold, I just decided to throw it in the tub. Now this is very important when you're doing the pump method or the siphon method. Make sure your fish cannot get into the pump or siphon. Time to plug in the pump. Always make sure when you start your pump that something isn't broken or missing and that the end of the hose is where it's supposed to be. My cat's already found it and is very amused by it, and she sat here for the entire, I think, 30 minutes watching the water come out of it. My cat is not very smart. Now it's time to talk about the when. So when you might want to start considering to do a water change is when you test your water and see that there's a high amount of nitrates in it. For instance, you can buy test strips, you can get your water tested at a local Petco, PetSmart, or any local fish store. I'm sure they'll be happy to do it.
Me personally though, I eyeball most of my tanks, like this 40 gallon. I change it on the first of the month every month. I do around a 40 to 60% water change, just kind of depending on how I feel. I usually look out for 3 things when I'm deciding when to do a water change. I look out for the color of the fish, I look out for the mood of the fish, and I look out for their appetite. Usually, happier fish will eat more, be more colorful, and act more active and happy and just overall better than a fish that's living in a high nitrates environment. You also want to take into account 2 other things that don't have to do with the fish's mood. How many fish do you have in your tank? Is it overstocked, understocked? And how many plants do you have in a tank, and how dense are the plants? For instance, my 40 gallon has a pretty good amount of plants in it, however it is heavily overstocked. If your tank is overstocked, you're going to have to clean it more often, do higher amounts of water changes, whereas if it's understocked, you'll have to do it less often and you'll have to do less quantity of water changed, which could be easier for you. Last but not least, just use your common sense. If it feels like you need to change your water, go ahead and change it. Trust your gut. It's probably time to change it anyways. So, that's it for the when. Now let's get on to the rest of the video. Now that I've removed around 40% of the water out of this tank, I'm going to unplug the pump and then go ahead and pull it out to stop it from siphoning water out of the tank. Usually during my water changes, since I've already got the tank so low, I'll cut my plants that have grown too big and replant them. I am very indecisive all the time when it comes to planting my plants, but I would rather them look really nice when I'm done and spend that extra 20 minutes doing it. Whenever you're adding water into your fish tank, make sure you use some kind of dechlorinizer, because the water needs to be dechlorinized. If it isn't, you're going to kill your fish with chlorine, which is no good. Also, remember, a little bit more is better than less. Whenever you're pouring water into your fish tank, you want to be very careful not to disturb the whole entire bottom of the tank. As if you do, you could mess up the sand, the detritus, the plants, and all kinds of stuff. So just try to pour slow and steady. Here's what my tank looked like after I added the first bucket back in. As you can see, plenty of detritus flowing all around the tank. If your tank looks like this, don't worry, it's just organic stuff slowly breaking down. The reason there's so much detritus in my tank is because I put almond leaves in here every 2.5 months. And it's coming up on the 2.5 month mark, so they've all almost completely decayed. As you can clearly see, the fish don't mind at all. They couldn't care less about all of this crap in the water. I'd pour my water onto this branch. However, you could put your hand on the surface of the water, a plate or a cup or anything else to slow the water down before it enters the tank. This is what an idiot looks like when they're trying to plug a filter back in. As you can see, they grab the wrong plug, grab the right plug, miss it the first time, and eventually, the idiot gets it in. Here's what the filters sound like. It's extremely loud and annoying. Now, even though I plugged the filter back in, I've yet to plug the heater back in, because it still needs this last bucket. Now that this bucket's fully in, I plug the heater back in to go ahead and start heating the tank back up. And here's what it looks like. Absolutely hideous. But it's actually cleaner than it was before, and you can see all of the detritus in the water column. Quite nasty, but it's perfectly healthy and natural. No harm, no foul.
Something I've forgotten to say till now in this video is make sure when you put water back into your tank that it is a similar temperature as the water that you're pulling out of your tank, so that way you don't shock your fish from a temperature difference.
Once I'm done, I remove the light again, put the lid back down, and then put the light back. And now this tank is officially done. Actually, I lied. I've still got to put the stuff back on top of the lid. Directly after I did the water change, you can see all of the fish are swimming around and happy. Your fish should be the same. They don't have to be perfect, but they should definitely still be lively. And here's what it looks like the day after. As you can see, all of the fish and plants have nicely colored up. And now I'm just going to let y'all enjoy some basic footage of them.
I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and of course if you did, go check out my TikTok and Instagram for high quality footage and photos. See ya!
Three, two, one.